Hello crafty friends, welcome to my channel and to today's video. So the other day I was having a poke around on Pinterest and came across this picture, and I really liked the look of those vine leaves coming down from the ceiling on the wall, and I thought that would look great on a card, to have some vine leaves coming down from the top of the card. So that's what I'm going to do today, but I'm going to do it kind of 4 different ways, so that whatever tools and supplies you have, you should be in with a shot of recreating this. So for card number 1, I decided to start with watercolours. I've got my Mungyo watercolours and some Winsor & Newton watercolour paper. And I just picked some greens, mixed them on my glass mat to get them to a nice watercoloury paint consistency. And then I added some blue to the greens just to change the colours slightly until I had what I was looking for. And then I just drew some wobbly vine type branches coming down from the top of my paper. I used a pencil so that I could erase them later. And then I put some leaf shapes going down my vines. So for one of my colours, I did little leaves staggered down the vine all the way to the bottom of the vine. And for my second colour, I did oval shaped leaves, alternating them either side down the next vine and finishing with one at the bottom. And for my last green, I did some quite pointy leaf shapes, pairing them on the way down so they're directly opposite each other, each pair, as they go down the vine. And then I just repeated this across the full width of the panel, making sure that my vines were different lengths to give them a really natural look. And because I was working on a very small canvas, as it were, this is going to go on the front of a 4x6 card, there wasn't really any point in me trying to get any detail in the leaves at this point. So I was happy just to add single colour leaves to each branch that I'd drawn. Once I was happy that I got a good concentration of branches and a good distribution of the different shapes and colours of leaves, I dried my panel with a hairdryer, and then I used a simple vinyl eraser to erase the pencil marks. To add a bit more of an artistic feel, I picked up the lightest bluey green with my paintbrush and spattered it over my branches, shielding the bottom half of the panel so that I could keep my card relatively clean and simple. And then once the spatters were dry, I took a grey fine liner pen and drew in the branchy bits amongst the leaves. I could have picked green, I could have picked a brown, but I thought the grey would make everything connected as it should be, but it wouldn't be too obtrusive. It would allow the green leaves to be the stars of the show. It was at this point that I decided that my leaves needed a bit of differentiation. So firstly, I brought in a gold gel pen and added some gold highlights to one style of branch. And then I brought in a white gel pen to add some white highlights to another style of branch. And finally, I used my gold glitter Nuvo Aqua brush pen thing to add some gold glitter to the third and final style of viney branch. And here's a close-up of my leaves. Really happy with the way they turned out. And for my sentiment, I just stamped with love and heat embossed that with gold embossing powder, and that can go on the front of a card. Right, on to card number 2, and for this card I used stamping, and I used some foliage stamps, different types, different designs for interest and variation. But I wanted to create a kind of watercolour effect, so I inked my stamps up and then spritz them with a little bit of water and then stamp with them. And that allows the ink to move about and give slightly blurry edges. And as I say, looks a bit watercolory. So I chose 3 Catherine Pooler dye inks in a greeny bluey colour palette and worked across the top of my card, inking, spritzing and stamping until I had a nice full arrangement. One of the stamps that I used wasn't a solid leafy shape. It just had an outline and some little bits in the middle. So I added a bit of ink to the door of my stamping platform just to use it like a bit of a palette, picked up that ink with a wet paintbrush and then painted in the leaf shapes to make them a bit more solid. So you can combine techniques if you like. You can do stamping with a bit of watercolouring. Once I was happy with the density and distribution of different colours and leaves, I decided to add my splatters, but instead of using watercolour this time, I used my Prima metallic accents and spattered on a teal green colour. Once that was dry, I used some gold paint to paint some gold highlights, so that's instead of the gel pen. To add some white highlights to some of the leaves, I used bleed-proof white ink. I popped a little bit on my glass mat and then used the small end of my stylus to pick up a little bit of white paint and add some nice round dots. And I do like using this bleed-proof white ink for this kind of thing because it really doesn't absorb much colour, so stays nice and white. For a bit of extra sparkle and shine, I added some gold glitter using the same Nuvo Aqua brush pen. And here's the finished panel. I really do like the watercolory effect you get when you stamp with wet stamps. I think it's really pretty. And now we're on to card number 3, and it's very similar to card number 2, but instead of using big leafy branch stamps to stamp whole branches at a time, I went in my stamp folder and pulled out lots of little leaf stamps and decided to try making some vines by just using individual leaf stamps and building up each vine. So I drew on some wobbly vine lines using pencil and used these as a guide for where to put my individual stamps. Instead of using my stamping platform this time, I used an acrylic block because it's just a bit quicker when you're working with individual stamps like this, I think. And I put some ink down onto my mat and then spritzed it with water and just dipped my stamps into it so they picked up watery ink. And then I could stamp with watery ink that way, and that worked really well. I think this might be quite possibly my favourite of the cards. I just love the way I was able to build up some vines with small stamps and get that watercolory look really easily and quickly by just picking up wet ink from my glass mat. For my spatters, I just picked up some of the leftover ink with a wet paintbrush and spattered those on. And then I took the grey fine liner again and I drew in the vine stems, the main part of the vine. I don't know what that's called. Stem, branch, don't know. Anyway, so I drew those in with the grey fine liner, but as I was doing it I thought, what if I draw around some of the leaves with the grey fine liner as well and give them all an outline. So for one style of leaf, that's what I did. I drew in the vine and then I drew around the leaves. For the gold highlights I used a gold gel pen again, and for the gold glitter I used the Nuvo Aqua pen again. And here is the finished article. Right, on to our last card, card number 4 now. For this one I used markers to create my leaves. So I used the grey fine liner to draw in some wiggly vine leaves. And then I took a greeny dot marker and added dots down one of the vine leaves to create that vine leaf look. And then I repeated that on some more of the grey lines, spreading that style out a little bit. For my second style of leaf, I used a light green dot marker, but I arranged the leaves in a different style down each of the grey wiggly lines. So with the first one, the dark green, I put the dots on fairly higgledy-piggledy, but for the light green, I kind of paired them up, doing one either side level with each other. To bring in a third style of leaf, I used a green brush pen and I pressed the brush, the solid brush nib tip thing, down onto the paper to create that leaf shape. For the glitter aspect, I again reached for my Nuvo Aqua brush pen. For the gold aspect, I used the gel pen again. And for the white aspect, I used the bleed proof ink again. To create my splatters, I added some water to my glass mat, scribbled on some of the darker green dot marker, and then picked that water ink mixture up with the paintbrush that had some of the white bleed-proof ink on it still, and that gave me a lovely opaque pastel green to spatter on. So that's the 4 different techniques, the 4 different sets of supplies that I've used and tools to create this kind of look. I wonder which one's your favourite, and I wonder maybe if you were to try this design idea, which techniques you would like to have a go at. Do let me know in the comments. I hope this video's given you lots of ideas for things you can do in your own card making or scrapbooking, journaling, what have you. If it has, let me know in the comments, leave a thumbs up, subscribe, ring the notification bell, and I'll see you back here very soon for another video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.